All right, gang, let's get our lab set up for this MCSA guide to installation, storage, and compute with Windows Server 2016. This is the Toshmo book for exam 70-740. I've already gone through and set up one thing, but I'll go through and show you what I did ahead of time. So we're going to start out here, type in turn Windows. And here we see turn Windows features on or off. We'll select that, and this will make sure that we do have HyperV installed, and that we can actually use it. So it's enabled. If it wasn't, you just check it, click OK, it'll restart your system, and you'll be good at that point. You'll have what we need to get our virtual server set up. So we'll come down here, we'll type in Hyper. We get our HyperV Manager. And here we go. This is our HyperV Manager. At this point, I don't have anything set up. We've got no servers. We've got no switches. We're going to go through. We're going to set up a server, and we'll set up a couple of switches while that server is actually doing its install. So first things first, we'll come to Action, New, Virtual Machine. And I keep having this window come up. I don't want to select that because I want to make sure I'm not missing anything as I go through it each time. So we say next. We're going to call this one Server DC1. Go ahead, next. We're going to do generation 2 on all 4 of the servers that we create for this lab simulation. We'll go next. We need 2 gigs, so it's 2048. Next, we're not going to connect at this point. We're going to set aside 160 gig of hard disk space. Make sure I had a terabyte drive so we have enough room to be able to do what we've got to do for this. Now we're running on Windows 10. I could run on server and do the same thing. So we'll go ahead next. I want to point to where my server ISO image is. So we'll browse, and I've got it here in my documents. Go ahead, open. If you put it on your desktop, it's going to slow this install down a little bit. So we'll go ahead and click next. Here's our configuration. Now note, this is where that server is going to reside, where that virtual server will reside. So if you made any errors, say for whatever reason you need to go back and delete that server, it's not just a matter of deleting it over on the right or clicking on the server and deleting it. You actually have to go in that folder and delete the residual that's in there. So we'll go ahead and click Finish. And there we go. There's our server. So if I go ahead and if I double click that, here's the instance of our virtual machine we've created. That's our connection. We'll go ahead and start it up. And that's this green button here. And that'll start our server. It's asking me to boot from the CD. I go ahead. And it's going to go and do our install for us. Now, we'll get a little bit of the way through. I'll go ahead and just click Next and install. And once this gets going and it's configuring the server for me, we will go ahead and configure a couple of switches. So go ahead and for whatever disk you're using, you're going to use your activation code for it. Okay. Now I'll go ahead and I click Next, and that'll activate it for me. Now I need to pick which kind of server that I'm going to create. Server DC1 is my primary server. That's going to be my Active Directory server. For that one, I'm directed to select Desktop Experience. Go ahead, initialize it, accept the end user license agreement. Next, we're going to do a custom install. There's my 160 I allocated for this server. Let's just go ahead and click Next. Now at this point, I've got a little bit of downtime and I can go do some other work while this is doing its thing. So let's come over here to Virtual Switch Manager, and I need two switches. I need an internal switch and a private switch. So let's create a virtual internal, so internal selected, create virtual switch. Now I'm going to name it internal so that whenever I see it, I know which one is which. It's already selected as internal, and I apply. So it's creating my virtual switch for me. Go up, OK, and I'm going to go back through the same motions again, this time for a private switch. I'll call it private virtual switch. I can just click OK, and it'll create that for me. So that got me going. This one's moving along okay. Let's go ahead and create a second one. It seems to be going fast enough. We'll go ahead and create our second one, and we'll go through the same motions. Action, connect. Oh, let me back up. I want to connect. Have focus off of that server. Action, new. Virtual machine. We're going to call this one server DM1. I'm going to go through pretty much the same steps. Gen 2, 2048. Every time I get into this, my numlock turns off. And that's just the fact that I'm jumping back and forth from virtual to real. 160. And we go next. Point to that same path again. Next. And finish. So I have my second server. It exists there. Check status on that first one. We're still plugging along there. And the second one, we'll go ahead and let's start that one up. So double click it. We'll come up, we'll start it. Same process, enter to boot from our virtual ISO. Go next, install. And we're just going to go through the same motions that we went through for that other one. Go back, enter my code again. Next. This one is also going to be desktop experience. We'll click next. We'll go ahead and accept it. Next. Custom. Next. And this should get our second one rocking and rolling. And there it goes. So we have that first one. Our second one. And at this point, I'll go ahead and wrap this section of the video up. These are both going to go through. They'll install, and once the window gets going. Now, there's a couple of things. One, we need to identify the password, and for this instance, they want us to set the password at uppercase P, A, S, S, W, O, R, D, O, 1. And the only thing uppercase is that initial P. So it's password O1, not 01. Okay? So aside from that, we'll be okay. So when it asks you for that password, we'll get that and go ahead and get it up and running, and I'll start the second video at that point.